All right, folks, I'm back with another episode of Morphy's Games of Chess. Here we got the Harvitz-Morphy match continuing with match game number 4 held in September of 1858. Okay, Morphy's got the white pieces, but he's down 2-1, folks. Okay, he dropped the first 2 games, but he won the last one, so he's got the momentum, and he's got the white pieces. Here he goes, E4. Harvitz answers with E5, and the knight comes out for Morphy. Harvitz playing his Philidor's defense. B6, protecting the E-pawn. All right, Morphy, standard procedure, hit that center. D4, they swap. Morphy takes back with the queen. And now the knight with a tempo on the queen, but Morphy pins that guy. We know the procedure, folks. All right, Harvitz breaks the pin. And you got to take that guy so you don't lose any time. Black has to recapture back, and there you go. The queen remains in the center, very strong post, controlling a lot of key central squares, right? So anyway, we've seen it before. All right, I'm sure we're going to see it again. Here we go. Now we got Morphy, right? Bishop to G5, attacking the enemy queen. In the second game of the match, Harvitz brought out the knight. Blocked it, right? Was considered the better move than what he does now. Here we go. We touched on it in the other game, but we didn't go into it. We saved it for this one, right? Here we go. We're going to get into this one now. F6 by Harvitz. First note, here it is. In the second game, Harvitz correctly played knight F6. The text move leaves a hole in the center and helps to shut in the king bishop. Okay? The dark square bishop for black is entombed by his own pawns. See this, folks? So this is going to be a little handicap. Morphy's going to try to build off of it. Now, also, once this pawn moves up, folks, the E6 square has no pawn protection in the black camp. See that? So it weakens the squares, primarily that square E6 in the black camp. All right. So now Morphy pulls his bishop back. He's got to save the piece, right, before we get down to the strategic plans. Here we go. He brings the bishop back to H4, and here we got another note. Steinitz prefers bishop to E3. All right, so why E3 opposed to H4? Well, the reasoning being, like we were just mentioning, black's dark square bishop really doesn't have much scope. It can only go to E7. It can only develop to E7. But if it goes to E7, folks, right, let's just throw in a move, okay? Where's the knight gonna develop? It can't go anywhere except here, but if it goes there, folks, not a good move, because then you can chop it off and forget about it. Now, you busted up that king side. You got an isolated F pawn on F6, right? You got the 2 isolated H pawns, as we talked about in a previous game. You know, those H pawns and A pawns are tough to queen. The rook pawns, okay, they're tough in an endgame. They're tough to queen. So now you got 2 of them, and your whole king side's busted. Nothing but disadvantages, nothing but weaknesses, you know, folks. So anyway, the only thing would be possibly you throw your rook on G8 as black, and you're aiming at the white king down the G file, and if black can castle long, so maybe he'll just go for the attack, an all-out assault, because his endgame chances are pretty bad. All right, with the busted pawns, isolated pawns, doubled H pawns, weak. Can't stress it enough. And we threw in this move, folks. Maybe you just developed a knight. And if he's dumb enough to go here and you take, right? You castle long, and then, all right, big deal. He's aiming at ghosts over here, right? So, king's on the other wing. All right, just some ideas. You'll see this countless times. Bishop takes knight on the edge, you know, and you bust up the pawns. Sometimes you'll see it on the other side of the board. You'll have doubled A pawns. Very common. You don't want to fall for that. So Okay, so anyway, this is maybe why, putting it together, why Steinitz prefers bishop e3. Because now, well, if the knight doesn't go here and the knight goes there, now where's your bishop going to go, right? So it just really ties black up. He only has the e7 square for his kingside minor pieces, and they got to decide where they're going to, what are they going to do? I mean, maybe the knight's going to have to come to g6, right? Maybe it's going to have to go here. The possibility of coming to this square, you know, and then the bishop's going to have to go to e7. All right, so it's a different game at this point, you know, but it's troublesome. It's like black can develop easily. He's got the space advantage, okay? Black's cramped, so he's already taking, you know, he's got the worst position, is what I'm trying to say. All right, so anyway, pawn up, blocking. All right, Steinitz likes this. Well, we're going to see the game with Morphy. He brings it to h4. Okay, here we go. So after bishop h4, all right, so now look at this. Look at that, folks. Like I said, right? Steinitz, there you go. You would have chopped him off. Now the bishop's on h4. Morphy can't do that. So, all right, here we go. Knight comes to c3. And here we got queen to d7. Question mark. All right, I'll show you why. It says here, a match game Lowenthal versus Harvitz, 1857, okay, a year before this game, continued. Bishop to e7, white castled on the king side, black castled, knight to d5, and they give the last move bishop to d7. It says in the present game, black occupies with his queen a square which should be kept for his bishop. You see, so the idea here is the bishop should be allowed to go to d7. That's the feeling of the old masters here, writing in the notes. Which I gotta admit, right now, folks, I don't have my reading glasses, and the lighting's pretty tough here. But I'm gonna try my best. All right, I'm as blind as a bat. But anyway, here we go. So, oh, okay. And here I put Shredder on. I was looking at this position because I was trying to understand bishop to d7, right? So anyway, I was starting to think, well, is it to push this guy? I mean, to push the c pawn and boot the knight on d5? Is that the idea? But anyway, then you come up with this move, setting it devastating. Look, if he tries to boot the knight, well, this was just, you're totally oblivious to the dangers. Look, double check, folks. Knight and queen. Okay, king can only move. You can't block a double check, folks. Look at this, especially when a knight, right? When a knight's involved, forget about it. There's no way to block a check from a knight. All right, so anyway, then you leap out. It's like you ran in and stole, you stole the bishop from the black position. See that? The dark square bishop. Yeah, it's entombed with its pawns, but hey, you take it, right? It was a weak piece at the moment. But all right, so he takes this guy, you take him. And he gets a pawn, right? But big deal. So look at it at this point. You're up +3. You're up a piece for a pawn, right? Okay. So what are you gonna do? I mean, if you try something like, I saw something like this maybe first. I mean, that doesn't do anything either. You're still up +3. And if you take, folks, well, now you just lost. You gave the piece right back. Right? All right, so you don't want to take. You undermine your own knight on f5. So, all right, you pull back. All right, he takes here. You take. You're attacking b7. He's attacking f5. All right, the queen comes up. Big deal. You're up the piece, right? You could protect your f5 pawn. I guess the knight doesn't have... The knight's not looking too hot on h6, right? You don't want him to get in the game, so you protect your f5 pawn, right? He could maybe hop here and there. What if he hops now? What happens? Oh, you control e5, right? If he goes now, you win a pawn, right? You win a pawn. So, you move back, control e5. He tries to grab control e5. You grab control e5 and defend b2 from the queen. Right? He still can't go here, can he? Let's see. If he goes here to try to get away, you just trade queens. All right. Either way, folks, I'm just looking at it quickly. I mean, you're up a piece for a pawn, right? Come on, right? We're gonna, after this course, after we go through all 300 games, forget about it. Your technique will be able to, you'll be able to improvise this one, right? There's just some ideas on that. I mean, you clearly win a piece after this. This is nonsense. We're going all the way into nothing for really, right? Here you go. You do the double check. You steal the bishop. There you go. It's over. Whatever. He wants to take, however you want to take, right? You get the pawn over here. All right, big deal, right? So you pull back, and there you go. What do you got? You got your piece for a pawn. All right, fair enough. So now, that's that whole idea. You can't ignore it. You can't ignore queen to c4, right? So now watch this. This was what we just looked at. You try to boot the knight, c6, right? But now, if you try to move the king out of the double check, well, you got to admit, you see it, right? The knight and the queen are a double attack on the c-pawn. Okay? He trades. The knight takes back. Here comes the rook on the open file. Now, you would think you go here and he could, well, you win the pawn back, right? You won his c-pawn, but your bishop's hanging over there. Your bishop on e7. So, okay, he can move here. Maybe he protects him. I don't even know. I didn't look at it that deep, but he basically needs to waste the tempo to save his bishop, and then, boom, you get your knight. Look at these centralized knights, folks, right? You defend your c2 pawn now from the rook on c8. You develop your knights in the center of the board. Look at these knights, folks. And they're in a nice d5 outpost, right? You got the knight behind him. No pawns, no black pawns could boot these knights. Beautiful outposts, right? Maybe you push c3. You keep, now the black knight would love to come here right now, but even then you boot him. If he jumps here, you're going to hit him with f4, right? He doesn't have an outpost on e5 because you got the f pawn to boot him out of there eventually, right? So, all right, he attacks your e4 pawn. You protect it, right? Now he can't even get the knight here. You see this? All right, so he could go here and try to come up. All right, fine. But, you know, this is it. You know, you control, you try to take the squares away from your enemy's pieces. You don't want him to post up and get good posts for the knights. Like, look, whose minor pieces are better? The black dark square bishop is hemmed in by the f pawn. He could try to come over here, get, you know, attack the knight. You know, he could come out on the queen side, get that nice diagonal. Okay, the knight's going to try to post up on e5. He's got to maneuver. Let's see what he does. When he goes here, right, are we going to try to maybe push f4? No, if we push f4 now, our e4 pawn hangs. All right, so it's a battle, strategic battle. I think white's doing better, right? You got, you're up a pawn, and the d6 pawn for black is isolated. You got a nice outpost. I mean, come on. What else could you ask for here, right? This should be able to be converted into a win. All right, so they like b3. You know, I'm getting sucked in, folks. I love this game. You know, I'm starting to get into it. This is where you got to know your strategic chess also. All right, so anyway, let's go back. So that's on this move, right? We're just looking a little deeper. They just leave it at this, right? And that was Lowenthal Horvitz, okay, 1857. So I don't know how it continued. Maybe Lowenthal played queen c4. I really don't know. Now you see the engine. We just looked at if the king gets out of the double check, and then you just drop this guy, right? And white gets the better position. But what if you do like the engine? You block with the rook, and now you win the pawn, and now he takes, and you take, and now he goes here, right? And you move back, folks. But now the dark square bishop it's not hanging. It's not hanging because you got the rook protecting it, right? So now he could come down and grab the pawn. You see the difference, folks? So he wins his pawn back. He's got a rook on the 7th. He's gonna, he's in the enemy territory. He's gonna harass these pawns. All right, now you gotta waste time protecting your B pawn, right? He's gonna maneuver and get in better position now. He's got another save the tempo there because you gotta make a dinky B3 move, right? So there you go. Like, so now you still got the beautiful D5 outpost, all right? And black's got the weak D pawn isolated. Still could be a win for white if you got to have massive technique. And we're going to be tacticians more. We're more that style than than this. Like grinding chess where your strategic stuff. That's a deeper understanding. I gotta admit, you gotta have a deeper understanding of the game. But that's why it's all the more beautiful. You get into that once you beef up on your tactics and combinations. Okay, then you really start getting into this game. Okay, with the strategic chess. Like you got Karpov. I mean, forget about it. You study his games. If you could understand what he does, oh boy, you're gonna really enjoy this game. All right, so anyway, there you go. A couple of ideas, right? Just pointing out interesting positions. Okay, so at that point, that's where they left us. The old masters left us at this stage. Lowenthal, Horvitz. All right, worth mentioning. Interesting stuff. But anyway, we're gonna go back to what happens in this game with Morphy and Horvitz, right? Knight C3, and then you had the queen coming to D7. And just to point out again, they feel that that black's bishop, the light square bishop, belongs on D7. All right, well, anyway, let's see how it goes. Morphy castles kingside. Bishop E7. Now the queen rook comes to D1, and Horvitz castles on the king side. All right, but let's just see something here. He castles. Okay, yeah, he castles, and then Morphy, like Shredder, throws the check in. Okay, and here you get a question mark. Rook to F7. Okay, now they're saying that at this point, unlike the other line that we looked at, that moving the king here is better, okay, than in the other variation with the the C pawn, the knight up on D5 already, okay. So anyway, that's what they say, and they say followed by knight. I don't know, let's say you throw the knight here. They say followed by knight to F7. Or vice versa was better. Okay? So whether you block first and then you move the king. I mean, this is what they claim. And as you can see, look, F4, you're taking away the E5 square. Strategic, folks. Don't let your opponent post his pieces. If you make a move and you drop a pawn and you hang a piece, of course. But, when it's all said and done, if this is a safe move, it's worth making strategically. You're taking away the beautiful center square for the knight, you see. So, right away, boom, look at it. Shredder goes right for F4. All right, so anyway, there you go. More strategic chess. But, okay, Morphy with the queen check, and Horvitz plays the rook. We're going to see. Why is that worse? Well, we'll try to figure that one out. Here comes the queen. Look at this. I mean, here comes the knight. Here comes the knight to D4. I don't know why I said queen. Knight to D4. Centralized knight for Morphy. But here they go. They put this down. Listen to this. All right. Morphy puts a question mark to this sideline of E5 to try to bust it up already. Okay, he gives it a question mark, and now in American Chess Monthly, okay, a publication from long ago, they give the analysis. They say pawn to E5 is not good, and Steinitz calls the text move much superior. We're talking about Morphy's knight to D4 as in the game, okay? But let's look at this one, all right? Let's look at this. It says the variations arising from E5 are at least interesting. White's threat being, can you see the threat, folks? It's pretty crazy, right? Do you see this, folks? Look, fork, pawn fork. Look at this, right? Pawn fork, queen and rook. Oh boy, that would be something, right? Oh, you'd want to stop playing chess if you didn't see that one and you were playing black, right? There you go. Check. Okay. Now you're up a rook, folks. Why not? Why not just even trade the queens? Why get fancy, right? Just trade them off. Trade down. You're up a rook. All right. So anyway, that's the threat. Okay. So maybe that's partially. This would be a line, perhaps, why it's better to move the queen in the king on the other move over here, right? On this check, maybe it's best to move the king there. You don't even fool around. E5 is not as strong then. But with the rook here, you got that threat. Got that threat. E5, right? E6 is coming. Let's see how Shredder would play it, just to look deeper into it. Now, the publication American Chess Monthly and Morphy himself give this a question mark. Not a good move. All right, here comes the queen, right? Let's just do it fast here. Let's do it fast. We could be better moves. All right, we're not letting the engine run too much. There you go. You attack the rook. He moves, right? You protect that pawn. Let's see. What does he do? What's he do? You hit the dark square bishop. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Here you go. You got this. Oh, now if you hit the knight, what happens if you hit the knight? He goes to G6. Yeah, if he goes over to C4, attacking your B2 pawn. All right, so Shredder's saying this. Let's go with the engine. All right, he attacks you. Oh, you go for the bishop. You defend and go for the bishop. If he takes you, you take him. He goes over. Now, he does have the bishop pair, but folks, right now, his dark square bishop, very weak. You wouldn't want to trade. If you could keep that bishop locked on E7, and you reduce it down to a knight on the light squares, you get light squares, and you keep black's pawns like this on the dark squares, oh, forget it. His bishop's just like a big pawn, right? Okay, he moves there, you save your bishop. You bring him over. Now you got two attacking the dark square bishop. I mean, if you could win it outright, then you take it. But if you're just trading, maybe you don't want to trade that guy. Okay? So really, the key feature, though, folks, right now, is the dark square bishop being trapped in by his own pawns. But also, you got the E6 pawn way up there. You know, that could be bone in the throat, really. What if you push right now? He's got 3 on the E7 square. Eventually, maybe you could try to push your F pawn to protect that E6 pawn. Have a passed pawn, a protected passed pawn, which we've been seeing a lot of in the last couple of games. All right, this guy comes back, but I mean, at this point, you don't have much of an advantage. It's under 1, but it looks like you know it's an easier game to play strategically. You know, I mean, look at the space advantage. You gotta admit, right? I mean, I don't know. Could be tougher than it looks. But I think at this stage, White's the one with the easier game, right? Can't let that dark square bishop get into the game. So all right, I'm getting sucked in. Forgive me. So anyway, that's fighting Shredder. You know that they say it's interesting line. E5 is interesting. Some of the lines are interesting, but Morphy's move superior. Steinitz, the first world champion. Okay, we'll take him up on that. He claims Morphy's move is much superior. Here it is. All right, we'll go with that. Right, we'll go with the man of the hour. Here we go. So knight up to G4. Okay, where do you think he's going, folks? I touched on it before. Morphy hits him, and where does he go? He goes to E5, right? Now he's hitting the queen, right? Tempo on the queen. Morphy drops the queen back to E2. All right. So at this stage, look at this now. Horvitz plays G5, hitting the bishop, and here's the footnote. This prevents White's F4. Okay, this prevents White's because that's the natural move, right? We saw it in the other line. I think we threw it in, right? You want to kick that knight out of E5. Come on, you can't let your opponent's knight sit there in the center, right? He's posting up. Get him out of there. But he's playing the G pawn up, gains a tempo on this guy, right? So obviously Morphy moves him to the only safe square. And now you can't push F4 because the knight, this is like considered, I think they call it a superficial outpost. He made an outpost out of E5. We have a white pawn that can boot him out, but with the black G5 pawn, it's protecting the F4 square. If we push it, right, king over, let's say, like they're giving in the engine. If we push this, matter of fact, let me see, is that to move? Wait. It's funny, the engine usually finds the moves these guys play. Let me get back to where we were. What move is that? 16 in the book. Again, forgive me, folks. I don't have my glasses today. Okay. Oh, he moves the rook over here, right? He moves the rook over here. And now, okay, knight to B5. Okay. Here's what it says in the notes. I'm getting ahead of myself, but here it says, this prevents White's F4, the G5 pawn push, right? But it leaves another hole in his game, of which White promptly takes advantage. Well, here's the move, folks. Knight to F5, right? Now Morphy has an outpost on F5. He's protected by the E4 pawn, and what? There's no E pawn or G pawn. The G pawn passed, folks. Forget about it. He passed. He went past the G6 square, right? He can't protect this anymore. He went past it, creating a hole on F5. Boom. Now the knight's in there, right? A thorn. And what I'm saying is black created a superficial outpost on E5, but with this G pawn, because if White wants to, as you can see, if he wants to push to boot the knight, well, you just chop it off, see? And the knight remains. Okay, that's like a superficial outpost over there. All right, so here we go. You got knight to F5, hitting the rook. All right, the rook comes up. This is going to be interesting now with this rook positioned on G6. Watch this. So now the rook comes up to G6. All right, so here we go. Here we go. Morphy playing F4 anyway. Here we go. The notes by Steinitz. A move which shows fine strategical genius. I can't even get it out. This is such a great move, according to Steinitz. All right, look, he takes. All right, Morphy taking. Don't take with the bishop. I mean, you can, right? But here he goes, Morphy taking with the rook. You say, big deal. What's going on? All right, the king moves over. He doesn't like that rook lift and the rook swings over. Now what's funny is he moves over here and Morphy zeroes in on that enemy. He puts the rook opposite the enemy king. Look at this. He's aiming right at him, folks. Now, if you haven't seen it, you do something stupid over here, right? Now, do you see the threat? Well, Shredder sees it. You can look at the engine, you can cheat all you want, but folks, you're not getting any better. Like, you got to develop the tactical vision. You got to let your brain cells think about this a little bit. You got to develop that tactical vision, your mind's eye, right? You got to see it with your mind's eye. All right, you chop him off. He can't take back like this, folks. You can't take back like that, can you, folks? Because you lose the queen, right? You lose the queen, okay? But anyway, he's not going to be a dope and take that way. So he's got to take this way. All right, now you sack the rook. Look at that outpost, the knight on the outpost, folks. Look at what it does. Here comes the queen. You can't block, folks, because the knight covers it. Lending support, good night, right? It's all over. Forget it. It's all over. You get a knight up, I'll tell you get a knight up outpost on F5 like this against black, and you're in trouble. Look at this. Now he goes back, and you pick up the piece anyway, okay? And look at this. Now, okay, you got the king. Look at him. He's in a net, folks. Your white queen takes away all remaining squares for the black queen at the moment. So put him in the scope of the other cannon that you have, right? You sacked one. You picked up the enemy cannon on G6, so it's all level. You got the two bishops versus the knights, right, folks? But look at this position that you have, right? There's no two bishop advantage here, folks, for black. No way. Look at this. It's curtains. It's curtains because the king can't move, right? And you just set up a nasty discovery. I mean, if this is the best you got, you know that the game is a bust, right? I mean, forget about it. I guess Shredder just won mate and 10. Look at this. You take him off the board, right? What are we even playing? I mean, you see what's coming, folks? You see the knight moves, right? And it's check. The knight moves and it's check. I mean, can you even play it like this? He blocks. Oh, he gets in there. Okay, all right. Well, now it's not as good. All right, so that's the idea of this, but okay. Let's chop him off, okay? Because I saw right away. I just saw this. I saw you go here, right? You give the check. You know, man, now if he moves, it's all over, right? It's all over. Forget it. If he goes here, for instance, right? He can't even go there. He has to go there. That's it, right? You chop him now with check. Oh, there you go, right? You go there, you go here, you go everywhere. Look, it's all over, all over. He goes there, right? There it is. All right. I knew it was somewhere, folks. But all right, he has this one. I'm just showing you all the little techniques and patterns. All right, he's got that. So that's why this is the obvious move, right? He's just throwing a piece into the wind. All right, now he's going to go here. I mean, he's busted, right? He's all busted. Forget about it. He goes there, right? We check. We're going to pick up the queen. All right, good night. Forget about it, right? Enough said. Okay? And there you go. So that's what's being threatened, okay? Let's do it just to go back. I had to throw in the useless A6 move to show you the threat. Morphy setting the threats, you understand? Rook to H4, now there's a threat. If you don't see it, bam, here it is again. You got to take out the knight because he defends the rook on G6. You see, that's why this is key. If you do this first, folks, and he takes, and then you go swinging over here with the check, right? He can move. Now you can't take the rook, right? I guess you can do this and try it, but look, in between move, right? And now he goes here, right? So there you go. It's not as good, right? You got to get the moves in order, right? So you take this guy, okay? And then it sets up this. Look, he doesn't even want to take him. And then he comes in anyway, right? You see what's coming now, rook to H8. And if this is his best move, well, the game's, look at this. All right, he's trying to be fancy. Don't go this way. Don't give him a discovery. See the bishop on C6. You go here, folks, and he comes right back. Comes back with check. I mean, forget it. But anyway, okay. Let's do it right. He comes here, he takes, check. You go here. You don't even complicate it. Why? Right, folks? Why? It's all over now. Okay, you're up plus 22. I think that's a big enough advantage, right? Oh, plus 23, right? I mean, you got the moon, folks. You got everything here. All right, so let's take back A6, right? Rook to H4. Morphy's move. This was just A6 was to show the threat. So, look at this. Shredder finds it. Okay, Horvitz is on, he recognizes the threat. He brings the bishop back. Now the queen protects H7, okay? So that was move 20, right? Move 20, my eyes. Okay, bishop, yes, bishop back. Okay, now we take the knight anyway. We take him out. He's posted up. Look, there's no F-pawn, right, folks? There's no F-pawn, so we never could boot him out. He's too strong there. All right, give up the bishop for him. Okay, now again, folks, do you want to take like that? There's the joke. The joke of the night. Okay, we get a little laughs there, okay? It's still in the cards. All right, you've got to take with the F-pawn, right? So now you got the two white knights versus the bishops. Again, though, we talked about the bishop advantage and all that, but now you always got to look at the position, of course, and look at black's dark square bishop, the D6 pawn, Look at is blocking him in. The black's dark square bishop, not too good. Okay, and look at the white knight on F5. I mean, look at this minor piece. It's as strong as a rook. When you can post a knight like this on an outpost up in enemy territory near the enemy king, I mean, just forget about it. The queens are still on the board. Key point to make. When you got a knight posted like this near the enemy king on an outpost, no pawns could boot him away. He's in the enemy king's territory, and you still got the queens on the board. Forget it. It's as strong as a rook. It might even be better than a rook at this point. All right. So here we go. Let's roll the dice. Let's see what happens. Right. So here we go. Now we got move 22. Forgive me. I don't have my glasses. So okay, bishop pawn. You got the F pawn taken back on E5. All right. So now we got rook to the open file, right? Rook to the open file. Here they come, the big guns. All right. Black moves the queen to E6. Now, the logic behind this, I think, is if he wants to undermine that knight, right, which is another important note, that the rook now backs up the knight also on F5, okay? So if the pawn, if you play this, right, and you would undermine your own outpost, right? No more outposts for white. That's what black's trying to do, trying to, undermine that knight on F5, get him out of there. He's too strong. But if he does it now, I mean, you can't take back here because you got this knight card in D5, right? So even if he takes back that way, well, now you drop the E pawn. You get it? Not good, not good. So now black loses his center and the king's exposed and, the attack rage is on. He loses a pawn, actually. So I guess the move, this could be to prepare D5. That's what I'm looking at. So anyway, it says rook to E8. I guess lending support to D5 is better. Would have viewed, here it is in the notes. Rook to E8 was better with a view of playing D5 next. I just throwing a move to play D5 next. Right? Now your rook protects. Now your rook protects the E5 pawn. See that? And now the knight on F5 has lost his outpost. All right, chop him off because you don't want black to maintain the bishop here. Now that bishop might start to shine, that dark square bishop of black. He's going to come into the game now. You understand? So, and now the knight's outpost is gone. It's not, the pawn on E4 is not protecting that knight anymore. So he's not cemented in, So it's amazing how the game could change. See, the thing about the bishop pair is they say games that are closed tend to eventually open at some point. So even if you have a disadvantage with your bishop being locked. The game's usually then at a late middle game, they start to rip open. So, you know, all of a sudden it could totally change. Your knights are undermined and the bishops start swarming all over the place. All right, so, but this rook move was the better move, they say, okay? He's not doing anything over there on A8, right? Get him in the game. Bring him in. Let him protect the E5 pawn, and then you push D5. All right, but Horvitz plays the queen. Wasn't the queen protecting H7, right? Now he's coming up to protect E5, right, in order to push D5. All right, well, can't do two things at once, right, folks? So here we go. Here we go. Knight to B5. Okay, well, Horvitz ignores the attacker on his C7 pawn, and he brings the queen over here, right? So now, you're going to see the idea behind this, but it does get a question mark. And queen to D7 would have made White's last move useless. This knight move coming up to B5 was a waste of a move if Black had played the correct move, queen to D7. It says it is, as a matter of fact, Morphy's one small error in a very fine game. His next move is a necessary precaution. Let's go to it. So, let me just go over that again. Morphy plays this move, which would have been a waste of time had Horvitz answered like this. Okay? Now the knight would have to just go back. C7's protected, right? Waste of time. All right. In a way, it's kind of silly because, look, rook to F1. Horvitz brings the queen here when he should have brought the rook over there, right? He should have brought the rook to E8, right? But he brings the queen. This is a waste of a move. He goes back. He would have nothing better than to go back. And look, it gives Horvitz a second chance. It gives him a second chance to bring the rook over to E5. You know? This didn't happen, but this could have happened. You understand? He would have gave him a second chance, but that's the inaccuracy, okay? You can't be perfect, folks, right? I mean, what are you going to do? So anyway, Horvitz plays the queen, like I said. He brings it to G8. Now he's doubled on the G file down at Morphy's king, right? So now get this. This is cool. I love this now. You got rook, subtle move. Look at it. Shredder finds it, right? These are the subtle moves. You're going to love this one, folks. Watch this. Now, rook comes up to F2, okay? So anyway, let's get into the rest of this. He boots the knight. The knight takes the pawn over here. All right. He attacks the knight. The knight leaps into D5, okay? The bishop chops him off. All right, no other move than to take back. You got to take back, but oh no, look at the knight on F5, his outpost, right? He has no support anymore. I mean, he's supported by the rook, but the pawn support, right, is gone. Now that pawn is on D5. Okay, so here we go. Look at this. Now you got pawn takes bishop. Now you got rook to C7, folks. Rook to C7. Now, what if he takes? What if he wins the pawn, you're saying, right? He could win D5. Why don't he take it? Rook takes pawn, folks. Is still in the cards. Look at this. He takes back. Here comes the queen with the check, right? The bishop comes. I mean, you know, you can't do this, folks, right? We know that. You just give it right back. Okay. So, here comes the bishop to block, right? Knight takes. Now you got rook takes, right? There it is, folks. The fork. The queen fork, etc. That's what they leave it at, right? Where's he go? All right, he wants to block. All right, there you go. You got to pick up the rook down there. There's the fork, folks. Don't forget that. So there you go, and you got, you know, you're up plus a pawn and a half, right? You got, let's see, you got the king side pass, connected past pawns. He's got a connected e5 pawn, but all right. So anyway, it looks like, look, the black king is exposed. The white king is not. He's got some pawns to shield him. But do you see? Do you understand the move? Rook to f2. Let's go back. Let's go back to the videotape. Come on, let's rewind. Here you go. Pawn takes. Pawn takes back. There you go. Queen takes check. You got the check move, block, knight, right? What if the, folks, right now, what if the rook was still on f1? Do you see what would happen? Do you see what would happen? Let's go back. I don't know. I mean, look at this. Look. It would be made on g2. Look. Queen takes, right? Once the queen, your white queen comes up for check, they block, right? And now you take the bishop. Who cares about the knight? Don't take back. You would have checkmate right here. The rook's on f2, so it protects g2, right? The rook is on the second rank protecting g2. If it was still on f1, it would be checkmate. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Subtleties, folks. You could see it, you know, you could see it coming. This is all the way back here, folks. Let's look at the f2 move, right? He goes back, right? Rook f2. Can you see it from here? Do you understand? He saw this, folks. He's gonna boot me. I'm gonna grab that pawn. I don't care. I'm gonna take it. He's gonna attack me most likely. I'm gonna jump to the only square over here, right? The only square to go to, folks, right? He's got to calculate this. This is how you got to get, folks. You see the forced line. Knight has to go here, or I lose it, right? He chops me off. I take. Now if the queen takes, well, I got this block I could take, and he doesn't have mate. He doesn't have mate on g2. There's no queen takes, folks, my rook, right? So now when he takes back, boom, I hit him with the fork. All right, he's still aiming down here. There's no mate, folks. There's no mate, right? If he tries to check, big deal. I go in here, look, everything's protected. He's got nothing. Meanwhile, look at your attack on the black king, right? I mean, forget about it. Let's see, he comes back here, for instance, right? All right, you don't want him grabbing a2, I guess. This is precaution. Here you go, right? All right, now we got rook f7 threat, right? Rook f7 threat. There you go. You're chopping off this guy, right? He's attacking your rook. All right, you protect it, right? All right, there you go. He's going there. All right. Got to be careful. You don't want to give him any kind of stalemates. Perpetual checks, you know what I'm saying? All right, so I don't know. You check him. He goes there. I mean, all right. So you're up plus 2.5, right? You're up plus 2.5. All right. Little technique needed, but you think you agree that white has the advantage at that stage, right? All right, beautiful move. The whole point of this. Beautiful move, rook to f2. All right, so then we get to this. Okay, this all happened. Pawn takes. All right, Horvitz doesn't take d5. Okay, he knows. He knows not to take d5. So where are we? At this stage, let's see. Okay, yeah, you're right. He does like Shredder. Okay, rook to c7 to protect that h7 square again. Okay. Pawn. Okay, now he has time to protect the d5 pawn. Okay, so here we go. The rest of the game. Bishop to e7. Okay. He's attacking the rook over here. All right, rook up to h5. Queen to h1. Queen to e8. Okay, and then we got pawn to c5. Exclamation point! What a move! All right, let's get into this one. All right, folks, let's start with the old masters in the notes. They give pawn takes pawn, queen takes pawn, check, wins. That's all they leave it at, wins. Well, the king moves. I don't know if you noticed. You see that? It's a queen fork, folks. You pick up the rook on c7, all right? So now, even if he tries to block like this, right, you win the queen. No sense there, okay? Easy game. You're up a queen. Now, this line is interesting that Shredder finds. You block with the rook so that when you take this guy, well, now he could take that guy. And when you take, not the pawn, when you take this guy, sorry, folks, mouse slip. When you take the bishop, he takes your knight, right? So now he's almost squeezing out of this, right? But you got the pawn fork. If he tries to pin the pawn, I mean, if you take him like this, he takes you like that. And you don't like that, right? All right, so if he goes there, you got this in-between move, though. With a check, all right, he tries blocking. All right, now you swap him off, check, he takes. All right, now you're finally down to the bottom of the barrel. There it is. You end up a rook up, okay, after all that craziness. So it's still all, you're in control, okay, you're in control. Just took you a while to get there. Little complication. I mean, if he tries something, okay, something like this, big deal. You just take, he takes, you take, you're up that rook again, folks. Game over. Right, so he could try this crazy line. Look, he goes here. Now, if you're dumb enough to take rook takes rook, well, then he takes pawn, and you're checked, and you move, and then you lose your rook. So now you didn't win the rook. Right, so now it's a tough one. Now it's basically a draw, because your white king's exposed. You know, the pawns are, you know, it doesn't matter now. It's just the queen's to draw. All right, so you let him right back in it. So you don't take with the rook, you take with the pawn. Okay, he could check you, and basically you can run around. He could harass you a bit, but you get out of it. You get out of it. Let's see. I guess they're saying to go there. I mean, he could check. Let's see. The only check left is from here, right? And then when you move, that's it. Look, he lost all checks. Look at that. Thanks to the pawn over here on f5, taking away g6. All right, so he buys some time. He's going to try to harass you. That's the whole goal. All right, you force the king out. Look at this. You hit him with the pawn even. Even the pawns are getting in, beating up on this king. All right, you check him. He goes here. I mean, you could just sack it all. You just say, hey, to hell with it. Right, he takes. There you go. And look, his king, folks. His king's on the G file. Your rook is on the F file. It's like a force field. He can't come through here, right? It's all over. Yeah, walk him in. Walk him in. And it's game over, right? It's another little trick to learn. Why make it complicated? See, you're going to lose the pawn. Yeah, you lose the pawn over there. Big deal. You got this one. He goes into queen, right? You only need one. How many queens you want, folks? Come on. Let's get real. All right, so anyway. So that doesn't work. Nothing works. You get out of it. No big deal. Okay? Don't panic, okay? Rook over still loses. I mean, you look at Shredder. That's if you grab here and he grabs you, right? We looked at that. But look, Shredder likes this better, right? All right, he takes, say if he takes this, you take the bishop. Why not take the rook? Why not just take the rook, folks? I say take the rook. He comes down with check. You come up. Let's see. He has no more checks. Look at this. He comes back. There you go. We queen him. I don't think he's got anything now. Oh, look at that. I mean, he's just throwing the pieces. He's just trying to prolong the game. That's all he's trying to do. Maybe someone's betting over under. You know, he's trying to make the, you know, make the over, I guess. It goes over so many moves, right? What are we talking about? So Throwing the queen here like this, it's all over when you do moves like that. Now, why even queen yet? Go like this. Look, oh wow, your queen is pinned. Look at that. All right, so what? He goes there. You take. Look at this. If he takes there, you queen next. So look at this. You got a rough. Now you made it rough for yourself. I mean, you still got the advantage, rook versus bishop endgame. But, you know, you had an easy win, right, folks? You got to admit. So that would be like a blunder. I'm doing this quick. I'm looking at it and learning as I go. I'm just throwing the pieces around. When you make a move like this, you figure, oh, that's senseless, right? So obviously, Shredder sees it. We did it in the other line. Just promoting the pawn is better anyway. But look at that, huh? He pins you're pinning his rook to the black king, which is protecting his bishop, which is pinning your queen to your king. That's insane, huh? So when you take here, he takes there, you're checked. And then he's got an option, if he takes here, so you just queen. So now it's queen versus bishop. So, of course, he takes the bishop. And now it's a rook versus bishop endgame, where he's going to lose this b-pawn anyway. So it's really going to start to crumble. So you got to work for it now, but it's doable. You got a big enough advantage here. But right here, look, queen down, you pawn, queen to pawn. You get two queens now. See? Now this guy's pinned, so you can take this without any nonsense from that bishop on f8 because it's pinned. See? Totally different. Everybody's dead now. Look at the difference, huh? The difference of what one move makes, folks. See this? That's a good example to see. Just one move, folks, in this game. And look at the contrast, right? You got this total annihilation of the black forces, right? But if you go back and you take with the knight, you end up in a rook versus bishop endgame. How about that, right? What one move can do to tip the scales, right? Swing the balance. All right, so anyway, a pawn takes pawn is no good after queen takes with check. All right, we looked at that. Okay, let's go to the next. What if the rook goes over here? Okay, the notes give pawn takes pawn, bishop takes, knight takes, and they say rook takes pawn. They say this is even worse, but they don't give anything more than that. So let's look at it a little deeper. You got the rook taking on e5 now, and the queen is forced to move, right? The queen's attacked. She's under the pressure too. And now you bring the rook down and attack the black king. He moves up, right? And let's see, you could give the check. And what does he do? Now, if he goes here to block, right? You take, watch this. This is pretty. Now, the queen takes and everything looks pretty good, but you pull the defender, the what's that called again? Oh, I forget. Well, anyway, basically he takes, right? You redirect or whatever. You pull the guard or remove the guard. I don't know. Divert. Right? You give the check. You're gonna lose your rook, but now you pull the king's defense of the queen, and there you go. You win, right? You give up a rook to win the queen, and there you go. You're up, right? You're up. How about that? You pin that guy. He goes up. You start pushing that pawn. He's got no hope. No hope. Nothing he can do. What's he gonna do, right? If he goes to try to blockade it, folks, well, there you go. Check, and you pick him up, right? No contest. No contest. Queen versus rook, and you got the passed pawn coming down. Forget about it. No contest. So right up at this point, if you block, it looks like black might get out of it, right? Good to know this technique. Deflection, is that the move, folks? The term deflection. You deflect the king over here, and you pick him up. Either way, whatever you want to call it, just when you're sitting there across the board and your opponent gives you the chance to do this, don't you forget it. You divert that king. Boom. You win the queen. He'll fall off the seat. Now, Shredder's saying to go there. You're pinning the black queen to the king. Now, if he takes here, what does that matter? It's a check move, right? So, that doesn't make any sense. He goes there. We check. Because if he goes up, folks, what happens if he goes up? We check. He goes up. This phone won't stop. That's it. I'm turning this off. Potential spam. Folks, I don't get it. You know, if you're playing your tournament, I'm going to tell you guys, if you're playing tournaments and your phone isn't shut off, look out. If it goes off like this, they're going to be docking you time. Okay? All right, so where were we? All right, we go here, right? It's a little nonsense. But, I mean, look, you're mate in 5. Let's follow through. Okay. Mate in 5. What's going on? All right, you work it down to here. He takes over there. You push up. He takes. You're going to check on F3. He goes back. And there it goes. Rook to H2. All right, it took some time, but there it is. All right, pretty. So, you win this way. I mean, this really makes no sense. But, all right, there you go. He takes your rook. I guess it took a while for the engine to find that. All right, pawn takes. Now you're hitting the rook on D7. Wait, really? If he goes here, he's just dropping his piece, right? I guess you know, this is coming next. And it doesn't matter where he goes, right? Look, it doesn't matter. Oh boy. I guess he's hoping you take this way and then he could save his rook. But still, you're up a queen versus rook endgame. Alright, but you know. Alright, he goes back. Goes back. Well, you could push the pawn, right? Oh, you pin him anyway. You pin him anyway. What are we talking about pushing the pawn? All right, it's all over. He doesn't even know what to do. It's so lost. All right, so that covers that move. You know, the rook on G6 taking, the old masters just say, is even worse. Here's the line they give more of. They give the rook on D7 taking the knight. All right, no different. You take here with your rook attacking the enemy queen again, and she can't go up here obviously, so you slide over here perhaps. Let's see what the old masters wrote was queen here. Now they say if the queen comes up offering a queen exchange, now you're not going to want to do that when you have the offense here like this. So, okay, this is admitting defeat when you give up the queen, right? Okay. And look at this. You're threatening rook takes rook, mate. So he comes up. And you just win the piece anyway. All right, you're giving this first. Goes there. Now you take. Either way, right? Look, what if you take here? I'll tell you what. Let's do it this way. Who cares, right? Get them off get everything off the board, right? All right, there you go. You got a rook, folks. Who cares? Don't make any silly mistakes, right? But the queen coming back, taking the rook is a lost cause. Okay? Rook down, then your rook comes down. All right. So they give the line, obviously. They say, okay, king up. All right, rook, queen comes down with check, etc. All right, so what's the etc.? All right, he goes there. You check from this angle. He has to go back. He doesn't have any other squares. Now you set this guy up. And there you go. Right? It's all ready to the trap is set. Look, he goes there. Queen takes mate. If he goes here, queen takes mate. Right? So you beat him either way. All right, so the queen coming up to b5, offering an exchange of queens. You know, that would be great for black. Get out of all the pressure, be relieved, right? No way. Rook down check is the answer. Okay, so he puts they give queen to d7 now. All right, so you come down again with check, and now this time in the notes they say rook down, queen check on e5. Okay, they say block. This is just prolonging the game. I mean, you're just throwing a rook away now, right? There you go. Look, you just could swap down, or actually you just do it like this. Look, and it's over, right? They're just you're throwing your rook into the wind like this just to prolong the game a move. So the old masters, they didn't even write that. They just give queen. Let's see, queen to that would be move 35, right? Yep. Okay, so the queen here, right? They skip that rook f6. So they give the queen to g7, and now you can take, and similar to before. Now the queen can't take; it's pinned. So it's similar as before, right? Just this time it's one move quicker because black didn't waste a move, waste time moving the rook to f6. Okay, so you get it done with the rook still on the board, right? But what's funny is Shredder found this too. Look at this line. You just bring the rook down. You don't even have to take. Bring the rook down now. Obviously he can't take because the queen again is pinned and it's game over. He can't take your queen because you just take the rook with mate, right? Good pattern to see. Rook down. I don't know. Shredder's trying this. Okay, so you take here. Now the pin is broken with the rook on f6, so he can take back. But then you just take the rook here in its mate because the queen is now pinned to your rook on e8. Ta-da! Right? Pins all over the place. I mean, when it rains, it pours, right, folks? When you got a busted position, this is what happens. You lose in so many ways. All right, so that covers queen to d7. And that's basically it. I mean, it's total destruction, right? So, what happens in the game? Okay, I guess Harvard saw these possibilities, right? So he takes with the rook on c5. He takes with the rook, and here we go. Rook takes pawn. Remember this idea? Remember this idea from long ago? Here comes the queen. All right, now, the queen, you can't take here, folks, because the queen does defend, unlike in the other lines we saw. But look at this move, folks. The knight takes the bishop. All right, now you divert the queen's defense to the rook on g8. There you go. So now you can take, all right? And yes, he's got nothing left, and he's trying to block, because if he moves over, folks, you got two good moves here. You could do this, right? Threatening mate on h7, which he's forced. The black queen has no other. She's on the dark squares. Can't defend h7 unless she slides up here. But then you could mate this way, right? On g7. Or, like Shredder finds, you could bring the rook down f8, and that's mate also. But black would have to sack, and there you have queen versus rook endgame, where, white holds the cards, right? He's got it. It is easy enough. Simple technique. You got the two pawns, the two passed pawns on the G and H files. Forget about it. And more accurate would be, instead of rook here, rook to f5, threatening rook to h5 mate. All right, he could throw in a check. Big deal. You're out of it. No more checks. And you see, if he goes here comes the rook, the block, right? And then I'm just looking if you check with the queen first, if it's any better. I guess it doesn't, right? Doesn't matter. Like if you go like this, then the king has to come up. Then you can take the queen, perhaps. Or you check. Are we gonna get mate here? I don't know. But why go crazy, right? You could do this. You attack the rook, and guess what, folks? You're gonna win wherever he wants to go. Where do you want to go, rook? All right, you go over here. You're gonna win this guy. There's no way he can defend it. See that? At this point, no way he can defend it. So you could take first. He goes there, and you can just win it outright, straight away, whatever. All right, so there you go. White wins. Okay, but Horvitz doesn't take the knight. All right, knight takes bishop. He doesn't take the knight. He tries moving the king up to g7. Now, I turned the engine off because I didn't want you to cheat. Now, do you take here like a dope? Do you take there, and then he's able to swap him down? See, and now you got a rook and pawn endgame. And boy, oh boy, that's where you need the technique, folks, and the knowledge, and I'll tell you, your head will spin. So, anyway, why make it hard for yourself, right? King up, knight check again. Folks, if he moves onto the F, he can't move here, right, to the H file because the queen. If he moves to the F file, right, I don't know, anywhere, here, there, anywhere, knight takes on D6 is check, right? Whether he moves here, check, double check, right? If he moves here, there you go, check from the rook on F2. So he loses the queen, you get it? He loses the queen. There you go, and then you lose like this. All right, so it's all over. So he can't go to the F file or the H file. So after the knight check, he's forced to basically go back. And now, interesting, you can take here, and then he would take, and then you would check, and he would come up, and there you go, the confounded knight, the rook and rook, king and rook pawn endgame, right? King and rook versus king and rook endgame. So, I mean, forget it. It's just like, why make it hard for yourself, right? So, again, the move, folks. The move is knight takes d6. Unbelievable, because the queen's defending the rook on g6, right, folks? And she can't defend the rook on g6 because there's only those two squares, f7 and e8, and now the knight attacks both, right? So she's got to get out of Dodge. She's got to get out of there. And if she abandons the, what is Shredder say to even do at this point? You give a spiteful check, I guess. That's how bad it is. Right? What's he going to do? His microchips are blowing. Doesn't know what to do. Look. Rook to c2 is the answer. Right, okay. There you go. You can't move the rook on g6. Right? You can't capture the knight because you hang the queen, right? As we just saw. There's really no answer, folks. And Horvitz resigned. Okay, he resigned after knight takes pawn because his goose is cooked. I mean, if he tries this too, look, you try one of these fancy ones, you take with check, now you're figuring the black queen could take the white queen on the next move, but no. Rook takes rook is now check to the black king. Luckily that works, it relieves white, so black doesn't have time for queen takes queen. I mean, Shredder's saying this. Alright, it's all over. Yeah, you could go that way. Oh, look at that, that's nice. End it with the knight, right? Beautiful. Alright, so there you go. It's all over. And after this, if he goes this way, well, then the knight supports the queen, right? All right, all the patterns, we're bringing them all to you. So this was a very nice attack. I mean, there's no answer after knight takes. There's just no answer. Look, look. What do you do? Harvitz knew. He resigned. So there you go. And it concludes with these notes. This is admitted by Steinitz to be a brilliant game. One of the only two brilliants which he allows to be among Morphy's actual match games. The other is the 9th game against Anderson. So there you have it. We'll get to that match, which is coming up soon, folks. Oh boy, that's going to be something else. All right, but anyway, we're going to continue with the Harvitz match. And I'll tell you, Morphy tied it up now, 2-2. Harvitz is going to come out with the white pieces, folks. Okay? What do you think Morphy's going to do against Harvitz queen, pawn to queen 4? What do you think he's going to do? Well, you're going to have to tune in to find out. All right? All right, now I'm looking forward to going over that game with you like all the others. I love this stuff. I hope you do too. All right, take care now. Have a good night.